Hello and welcome back to the workshop. We're steadily progressing on this massive Sapele door frame. Just pushed it together for the first time, first assembly. Got these sills cut in last night. So today got to cut these tenons down so that will fit in, but that's all pretty much set. That's no problem at all. We've got some glazing bars to make to go in between here. There's a little sill detail, like a little shelf that pokes out the face of the frame, so it's going to be a little timber shelf that comes out and round and is completely flat on top of here. So that's got to be chopped through this moulding and machined and made into that piece. These panels need doing as well. There's some sort of fixed panels there with a little raised detail in the middle that's got to go in this bottom section, so I've got to deepen these rebates to accept that one, and they'll need a groove in the underside of these rails. And there's all sorts of other little jobs like sanding the mouldings properly in the inside edges. There's a top rail section to go in here that's going to mirror the top rail section that's going in the door, so that it ends up the same sight line all the way across the frame, like so. So I'm going to plane up some bits to get them out, and the glazing bars and the sills that I'm going to put in there. So get some fresh wood out, plane it up to size. Luckily you can go to the drawing in the workshop and just measure what the dimensions of these pieces, so I know exactly what I've got to get out. That's the sill section there at the sides of the frame, so it's going to be notched around these mouldings. Then that panel groove wants bringing back to this position here, so it's a little bit deeper than the position at which the glass runs through in. Exciting delivery, just come off a lorry. I'll show you what that's all about in a minute. So this is a MS polymer sealant adhesive. We use a lot of this stuff from anything from glazing through to like fixing skirting boards or any fixings that you want to make solid. It's sets like a rubber, but it's also paintable, so it's really nice stuff for caulking joints from over painting and stuff like that. So it's called SP150. They have a 600mm foil tubes that you put in a 600mm gun. Boxes of 20. So it's not got a massive date on it, but it tends to last a lot longer than the date anyway. If anyone's interested in a box, then I'll do a decent price on their boxes of 20. Probably 50 quid a box, something like that. Then I'll do a decent price. I'll probably put them on my website, see if I can get rid of a few, because I don't need all of them. Right, so start with them glazing bars, because they're probably going to be the easiest, and I can machine them at the same time as them head rails. So just set out the shoulders of the tenons on a pattern piece. If you remember when I was mortising, I did the mortises for the glazing bars in the same plane as this top rail, so it's the same gauge mark. Just the top shoulder is going to be deeper because I'm not going to extend the rebate side of these glazing bars right to the outside of the frame. I'm going to keep them back a couple of mil, and then that'll allow the bead that glazes the edge of these uprights is a staff bead like this, and I want the glazing beads that are going to go across on this glazing bar to finish into the flat of that staff bead. I don't want it to be flush like this, so I'm effectively going to be just putting a tiny little minor bead onto the centre of that glazing bar, finish it into the flat of these staff beads. It's a little bit unusual, very unusual in fact, for how to glaze a frame, but it's just the aesthetics of this one and how it worked out. So that joint in these big rails is identical to the glazing bars, so I can push them through the tenon all at one time. So I just set that up with the new backing piece, set my tenon width, so 15.7 is about perfect for my mortise chisel. I just widen that top head back to create my 18mm rebate offset. I'm just going to wind it back to 19 on the gauge, so it's a bit further back. Don't know if you can see that on the screen, but I'm working to this bottom line here to get this cutter block cut into the right depth first. So after measuring the actual rebate I'm tenoning this over, it's 18.3mm rebate. So from here, this shoulder to this shoulder, I need 18.3 difference. From the end of the tenon here, I'm going to go 58.3 down, which that pretty much is. Bang on. Couldn't get that any better. So on this side, I want to go exactly 40mm off the end of that tenon, which it pretty much is. So that was a dead lucky guess, that bit of setting up, and I went a mil extra on the gauge, so my gauge is obviously reading off. But I get way more accurate results measuring with a vernier caliper off the end of the tenon, each side down to the shoulder, than I do any other way of trying to measure it. With that set up, I can push all them through. Push them bits through the planer just to get rid of that tiny bit of like grain where it gets pushed against the stop. Even though there is a zero clearance stop on the back of the tenon, the last few grains always tend to peel a little bit. Even if it cuts sharply on the edge, there's still a bit of peel on them fibres. So just planing 3 or 4mm off each side gets rid of it, so you get lovely crisp edges to the shoulders of the tenon. And moving on to the table saw, I'm going to cut my rebates for these glazing bars because they're such big rebates in such a small piece of wood. You only end up with 5mm of timber left in the middle. A rebate cutter is just going to destroy the piece of wood that's left in the middle. So what I use is the table saw. So just set the height of the blade to what rebate we want. Then we're setting from the fence to the outside edge of the blade the depth of our rebate, which is 15mm. Got a little test piece here just to set that cut up. A decent sized push stick that keeps your hands well out of the way, but can give plenty of support to the whole piece. These top rails want a slightly different rebate to the glazing bars, so I've got to do them 18mm deep and then they're 57mm high. So the beads on the inside of the door are going to have this profile moulding up to them, so it's like a mini staff bead. It's only 15mm tall, and these glazing bars will be on the inside, so it'll be on the side where the beads are on a door. So I'm going to just run that through there twice, and it should give on that 35mm exactly the same profile on the side lights on the inside as the door will when it's got 2 beads either side of the rebate. The difference being the frame is glazed from the outside and the door is going to be glazed from the inside face. Because this cutter is orientated so the little cut is at the bottom and I want to run my material, I'd have to run it so that the cutter block was sat above the material in the spindle moulder, so it's sat like that and cut like that. To make it safe, I can turn everything upside down, but the blades are then in backwards, so I have to reverse the direction of the spindle, which I can do on this machine, but you have to feed the material in from the left-hand side, so everything is a little bit backwards to normal, but it's a much safer way of working than if you have the cutter block above and try and feed small pieces through the machine. I think you can do it with a single phase somehow, but it's just a 3-phase. It just swaps the couple of the phases over so that the motor runs in reverse gear. It puts a little warning light on the front to remind you that it is in reverse. Let's run a sample through here, that offcut I cut through the saw. And that cutter's just cut in too much See, from like the bit it's left in the middle to the bead, it's too much, so I've had to like stop it away from the edge, so it's not like a true curve around the edge like it should be on the right here. If I do it a true curve around the edge, it takes too much out the middle. It only leaves you with like 1.5 mil stand in the middle. It's got to match the glazing bar that's going to be in the door, which is going to be a 5 mil centre. Yeah, it doesn't really work. It just looks wrong having that big gap there, so I'm going to modify the cutter a little bit. So there we go, just took that back a little bit on the Tormek, ground the top down flat with the top of the cutter, so that it gives me more of like a 3 mil step than a 4.5 mil. So that solid backstop, it's not sprung loaded or anything, it's completely solid. What it does is once that rail is in position, even if there's a tiny bit of play, it can't like fall in on that rebate or move too much when it's going past the cutter. So I can almost push that through with a push step, knowing that it's not going to tip or fall and damage the workpiece with the cutter. Had to cut a little rebate out the back of that top rail so it slots in underneath that transom. Like so. Sit in there. I'm just going to try that one in and then clamp it all together. I'll just push them together to try. This side is slightly worse than the other. These glazing bars, I don't know if you can see under there with the light, but they just want a shading off this top shoulder, about probably 0.5 mil. 0.5 mil would probably be too much, so I'm just going to eyeball a shading off there. And then the same on that top rail. It's okay on this side, but this side there's just a tiny amount. So it's just machining intolerances from running these big pieces of timber through. If something runs slightly out of square, 0.5 mil is absolutely nothing. Like I say, this side is mint. I've not put any fixings in or clamps on that. And yeah, it looks absolutely great. This is my piece of wood to go on here for the shelf. So that's going to be the top of it to make up the 18 mil rebate. So effectively this panel here is my glazing rebate. I've got 18 mil the shelf coming up here. I've got to cut out 30 mil back from that line. That is dead tight, but by the time everything's sanded, the size of this is going to get reduced by probably 0.5 mil, taking them planer ripples out. Right, let's go for another dry run on the assembly. Thanks to my list, I remembered to cut these tenons down so I could put everything together tonight. What a frame. Just going to extend a couple of clamps, just drop a bolt through where the pin goes, through both clamps. $15mm past there. I've just had a cup of tea and seen George gassing something off of the machine. So that means at least half an hour of angle grinding now. Oh well, right. That is everything cut in place and fitted. I've just got to cut these off to length. I think I'm going to finish these just a bit in from the edge of the frame. I'm going to say like 18mm in from the edge and cut them off square. But I think they will get cut back a little bit more. But I don't want to go too mad. I could pre-cut them and then the door line, like the window lining or whatever is lining this opening, is going to go up to that. But I don't want to leave myself wrong if the lining has to sit out for the architrave to cover something on the plaster. I don't want to cut them in too short and create a problem. So I'm just going to finish them off flush or slightly in from the edges, and I can cut them on site to suit. So I've got to take it all to bits, sand absolutely everything, deepen this rebate here to accept an insulated panel. I'm going to groove it so that when I fit the panel in, I can strop it up and in there. I don't lose any height on the outside because it looks really good at the minute. And then we should be ready for a glue up. There we go, deepen them in nicely. I've had to bodge that, so I dropped that into the rebater on the spindle, then took the last little bit out with the router and left the end on the tenon there. Because I've changed this to a deeper rebate after I set these tenons out. Originally it was just going to run in line with the glass. But I've decided to deepen the panel rebate and have like a 50mm panel in here. So obviously that would have took the tenon out and made a bit of a gap in the joinery. So at least I remembered to not push them all the way through and leave a big gap in there. That's been gluing a bit in. Okay, so I'm going to end that video there. I've now got a few hours of sanding to get all this lot ready for a first coat of paint. Then in the next video, I'll probably be painting it. So I've got to get a coat on. I'm probably going to get a decent finish on all the inside edges before I glue it together. So yeah, a few coats of paint and sanding in between, then we'll glue it together.